Good evening, and welcome back. Tonight we explore one of the most unusual and debated locations associated with unexplained phenomena in the United States. Far from large cities and surrounded by quiet desert landscapes lies a remote ranch that has become the center of stories involving strange lights in the sky, mysterious creatures, and events that investigators have struggled to fully explain. The location is commonly known as Skinwalker Ranch, a property situated within the wide open landscape of the Uintah Basin. For decades, the ranch has been associated with reports of unusual activity that some residents and investigators believe cannot easily be explained through ordinary causes. The name Skinwalker itself comes from traditions connected to Native American folklore, particularly stories from the Navajo culture. In those traditions, a skinwalker is often described as a supernatural figure capable of transforming its appearance or taking the form of animals. While these stories belong to a much older cultural tradition, the name eventually became associated with the strange events reported on the ranch. During the 1990s, a family who moved onto the property began sharing accounts of encounters they believed were highly unusual. They described sightings of large unidentified animals, glowing objects moving across the night sky, and unexplained disturbances affecting livestock on the ranch. These stories quickly attracted attention from investigators interested in unexplained phenomena. Over time, the ranch became the focus of scientific curiosity as well as public fascination. Researchers, journalists, and paranormal investigators began visiting the property to document the reports and search for possible explanations. Some believed the location might represent a concentration of unusual environmental activity. Others approached the stories with skepticism, suggesting that many of the reports might have natural explanations. Yet even after years of investigation, the ranch has remained associated with mystery. Reports of strange lights, unexplained sounds, and unusual sightings have continued to circulate among those who have spent time in the area. The location has gradually become one of the most discussed sites connected to unexplained phenomena in modern American folklore. Tonight, we will explore the history of the ranch, the experiences reported by the families who lived there, the investigations that followed, and the many different interpretations proposed by researchers and skeptics alike. So settle in, allow the quiet of the evening to settle around you, and let the story begin as we travel to the remote landscapes of northeastern Utah, where the strange reputation of Skinwalker Ranch first began to take shape. The story of the strange events associated with Skinwalker Ranch begins with the landscape itself. The ranch sits within the wide and rugged region known as the Uintah Basin, a large geographic basin in northeastern Utah surrounded by mountains and open desert. The area is known for its vast skies, long quiet nights, and stretches of land that feel isolated from the rest of the world. The basin lies between several mountain ranges, including the Uintah Mountains to the north. These mountains form one of the highest ranges in the state and create a natural boundary around the basin. Within this landscape are scattered ranches, small communities, and large areas of open land where the horizon can stretch for miles without interruption. For generations, people have lived and worked in this region through ranching, farming, and energy production. The environment can be both beautiful and demanding. Summers bring intense heat under wide blue skies, while winters can cover the basin in snow and cold winds sweeping down from the mountains. Despite the quiet appearance of the landscape, the Uintah Basin has long been associated with unusual stories. Local folklore and oral traditions describe strange lights in the sky, unexplained sounds in the desert, and encounters that some residents believed could not easily be explained. Such stories often circulate in remote regions where the night sky is clear and the environment remains largely undisturbed by city lights. The basin is also historically connected to the lands of the Ute tribe. Indigenous communities have lived in this region for centuries, and many of their traditions include stories connected to the land and the spiritual world. Some legends describe areas that were believed to carry unusual energy or significance. Over time, these traditions blended with the experiences reported by modern residents of the basin. Ranchers and travelers occasionally described sightings of unusual lights moving silently across the sky, or animals behaving in ways that seemed unfamiliar. While many of these reports may have ordinary explanations, they contributed to the reputation of the area as a place where strange events sometimes occurred. The wide open skies of the basin also make it a region where celestial phenomena can appear especially dramatic. Meteors, satellites, and atmospheric effects can sometimes produce sights that seem mysterious to observers, unfamiliar with such occurrences. In remote places where artificial light is minimal, even ordinary events in the sky can appear extraordinary. Yet it was not until the late 20th century that the quiet ranch within this basin would become widely known. Once a family moved onto the property and began sharing their experiences, the location would gradually attract attention from investigators, journalists, and researchers curious about the reports of unusual activity. From that point forward, the remote landscape of the Uintah Basin would become inseparable from the growing legend of Skinwalker Ranch. During the mid-1990s, a ranching family named the Shermans purchased a property in the remote landscape of the Uintah Basin. The property itself appeared like many other working ranches in the region. It included open grazing land, a farmhouse, and the quiet surroundings typical of rural northeastern Utah. The family had been searching for a place where they could raise livestock and enjoy the slower rhythm of ranch life. When they first saw the property, it seemed peaceful and ideal for their needs. The land offered wide pastures for cattle, and the remote location promised privacy away from the noise of larger towns. After purchasing the property, the Shermans moved into the ranch house and began settling into their new environment. Like many ranching families, their daily routines quickly became centered around caring for livestock, maintaining fences, and managing the land. At first, however, they noticed small details about the property that seemed unusual. Heavy bolts had been installed on some doors and gates around the ranch house, particularly on the outside rather than the inside. To the family, this seemed odd, because such locks appeared designed to keep something out rather than to secure the house from intruders. They also noticed large chains attached to some of the livestock gates, stronger than what would normally be needed for ordinary ranch work. The previous owners had apparently taken steps to reinforce parts of the property, although no clear explanation was given at the time. Despite these details, the Shermans continued focusing on their work and daily life. Rural properties often contain modifications made by previous owners, and the family assumed these additions were simply part of the ranch's history. Soon after settling in, however, the family began experiencing events that they found difficult to explain. Some of the earliest incidents involved livestock behaving in unusual ways. Cattle and other animals occasionally appeared nervous or restless during the night, even when there were no visible predators nearby. At other times, the family reported hearing strange sounds across the ranch property after dark. The remote landscape meant that sounds carried easily across the open fields, making it difficult to determine where they originated. The Shermans also began noticing unusual lights appearing in the distant sky above the basin. Lights in rural skies can have many explanations, including aircraft or satellites. Yet the family believed some of the movements they observed did not behave like typical aircraft. As the weeks passed, these experiences slowly began to accumulate. What had first seemed like small curiosities gradually formed a pattern that made the family increasingly uneasy about their new home. The Shermans had moved to the ranch expecting a quiet life in the Utah countryside. Instead, they would soon find themselves at the center of one of the most widely discussed locations associated with unexplained phenomena in the United States. Not long after settling into the ranch in the remote Uintah Basin, the Sherman family began experiencing events that they later described as deeply unusual. At first, These moments were small enough to dismiss as coincidences or misunderstandings. Rural life often brings unexpected noises and movements, especially in wide open landscapes where wildlife and weather can behave unpredictably. One of the earliest incidents described by the family occurred during the evening while they were outside near the ranch house. According to their later accounts, they saw an animal approaching from the darkness of the pasture. At first glance, it appeared to resemble a large wolf, yet something about its size and behavior seemed unusual. The animal reportedly showed little fear of humans. Rather than retreating when approached, it continued moving calmly toward the ranch house. In rural areas, predators typically avoid human activity, so the animal's behavior caught the family's attention immediately. As the story is often retold, the family attempted to scare the animal away, but it did not react in the expected way. Even when confronted, the creature reportedly remained calm and continued walking near the livestock areas of the ranch. Eventually, the family took stronger measures to drive the animal away. Despite these efforts, they later claimed that the creature appeared unusually resilient before finally disappearing into the darkness of the surrounding fields. After this encounter, the family began paying closer attention to the land around their home. Ranchers are accustomed to observing animal behavior, and anything that appears unusual can quickly become noticeable. In the following days, they reported seeing tracks and signs that suggested large animals had moved through parts of the property during the night. These early encounters created a sense of unease that slowly grew within the household. While predators such as coyotes and mountain lions are known to live in parts of Utah, the family believed that what they had encountered did not behave like the animals they were familiar with. At the same time, the family also began noticing strange lights appearing in the sky above the ranch. These lights sometimes appeared as small glowing objects moving silently across the dark horizon of the basin. Lights in rural skies are not uncommon, especially in areas with clear visibility of satellites or distant aircraft. Yet the family believed that some of the movements they witnessed did not resemble typical aircraft patterns. Over time, these observations, combined with the earlier encounter with the strange animal, began forming a pattern in the family's minds. The ranch that had seemed peaceful during the day now felt different after nightfall. The first strange encounters on the property did not yet suggest a larger mystery, but they marked the beginning of a series of events that would eventually bring the ranch national attention. What the Shermans believed they had witnessed was only the first chapter in a story that would soon grow far more complex. As time passed on the remote property in the Uintah Basin, the Sherman family continued to report encounters with animals that they believed behaved in ways that they could not easily explain. The ranch itself was surrounded by open land and natural habitat, meaning wildlife was a normal part of everyday life. Coyotes, deer, and other animals were commonly seen moving through the region. However, the family described several encounters with creatures that appeared unfamiliar to them. The most widely repeated account involved a very large animal that they believed resembled a wolf, but seemed significantly larger than typical wolves known to inhabit the area. According to their recollections, the animal approached livestock areas of the ranch without displaying the usual caution. Predators tend to show around humans. In most cases, wild animals retreat quickly when confronted by people. Yet the creature described in their account reportedly remained calm and unusually bold. Some members of the family later said the animal appeared almost uninterested in human presence, walking near the ranch house and livestock pens before eventually moving away into the darkness of the surrounding fields. Other sightings described animals moving along the edges of the property during the night. Ranchers are generally familiar with the appearance and movement patterns of local wildlife, so anything unfamiliar can quickly attract attention. The family also reported finding unusual tracks in the soil and snow around the ranch. Footprints were sometimes described as being larger than expected for common predators. However, Interpreting tracks in outdoor environments can be difficult because wind, weather, and overlapping animal paths often distort their shape. Stories about unusual animals in this region also connect with older folklore traditions associated with the land. The name Skinwalker Ranch itself reflects a term linked to stories from the Navajo culture, where a skinwalker is described in legend as a figure capable of transforming into different animal forms. It is important to note that such traditions belong to specific cultural beliefs and spiritual stories that existed long before modern reports connected them to the ranch. The stories passed down through generations are complex and deeply rooted in cultural history. As reports from the Sherman family spread among neighbors and local residents, the ranch gradually began gaining a reputation as a place where unusual sightings occurred. Some people believed the reports might simply involve unfamiliar wildlife, while others wondered whether something more mysterious might be taking place. Regardless of interpretation, the stories of strange animals moving across the ranch became one of the earliest elements that helped shape the growing legend of Skinwalker Ranch. The quiet property in northeastern Utah was slowly becoming known as a place where ordinary explanations did not always seem to satisfy those who believed they had witnessed something unusual. For the family living there at the time, however, the experiences were not legends or folklore. They were moments that unfolded during quiet nights on a working ranch, leaving the family searching for explanations that remained difficult to find. As the Sherman family continued living on the property known today as Skinwalker Ranch, another category of unusual events began drawing their attention. These reports involved lights and objects appearing in the night sky above the wide desert landscape of the Uintah Basin. The basin is a region known for its clear skies and limited light pollution. Far from major cities, the night sky often appears exceptionally bright and detailed. On many evenings, stars, satellites, and occasional meteor streaks can be seen moving across the sky with remarkable clarity. Because of this visibility, residents of rural areas sometimes observe aerial phenomena that people in cities rarely notice. Weather balloons, aircraft at high altitude, satellites, and atmospheric reflections can occasionally produce lights that seem unfamiliar or unusual. According to accounts shared by the Sherman family, they sometimes observed glowing lights moving silently across the sky above the ranch. These lights were described as small, bright objects that appeared suddenly and then disappeared without obvious explanation. In some cases, the lights reportedly hovered briefly before moving away at speeds that seemed unusual to the observers. On other occasions, they appeared as distant glowing points drifting slowly above the horizon before fading from view. Sightings of unexplained aerial lights have been reported in many remote regions around the world. Because the sky contains many natural and human-made objects, determining the exact origin of such lights can sometimes be difficult without detailed instruments or recorded observations. The family also described moments when the lights appeared closer to the ground, sometimes illuminating sections of the landscape before disappearing again. These experiences added to the growing sense that the ranch might be a location where unusual phenomena occurred. Stories of mysterious lights were not entirely new to the region. Residents of the Uintah Basin had occasionally spoken about strange aerial lights for years before the Sherman family moved onto the property. Some people believed these sightings were simply distant aircraft or satellites, while others wondered if something less familiar might be involved. Over time, these accounts began attracting the attention of researchers and investigators interested in unexplained aerial phenomena. The idea that unusual lights were appearing regularly above the ranch helped transform the location into a place of growing curiosity. Whether the lights represented natural atmospheric events, distant aircraft, or something that simply appeared unusual to observers on the ground remained an open question. What mattered most to the family experiencing these events was the frequency with which they seemed to occur above the quiet ranch landscape. As these reports spread beyond the local community, the ranch gradually became known not only for strange animal encounters, but also for mysterious lights moving across the dark skies of northeastern Utah. As the months passed on the property known as Skinwalker Ranch, the Sherman family reported another category of disturbing events involving their livestock. Ranching families depend heavily on the health and safety of their animals, so anything unusual affecting cattle quickly becomes a serious concern. The ranch was located within the wide-open terrain of the Uintah Basin, where cattle grazing across large areas of land was a common part of rural life. Ranchers typically monitor their herds closely, watching for signs of predators, illness, or environmental hazards that could harm the animals. According to the family's accounts, they began discovering livestock that had died under circumstances they believed were unusual. In several instances, cattle were found dead in open pastures without clear signs of predator attacks. In normal situations involving predators such as coyotes or mountain lions, animal remains usually show clear evidence of feeding or struggle. However, the family reported that some of the livestock deaths they encountered did not resemble typical predator behavior. Some animals were discovered in areas where no tracks or signs of disturbance were easily visible. In rural environments, tracks are often present when predators approach livestock. Yet the family sometimes reported that the surrounding ground appeared strangely undisturbed. The idea of unexplained livestock deaths has appeared in rural reports across several regions of North America for decades. In many cases, these incidents are eventually explained by natural causes such as disease, scavenger activity, or decomposition processes that can alter the appearance of animal remains over time. However, in the case of the Sherman family, the repeated incidents contributed to a growing sense that something unusual might be occurring on the ranch property. Each discovery added to the list of unexplained experiences the family believed they were encountering. Some observers suggested that environmental factors might have played a role. Harsh weather, illness within herds, or scavenger animals arriving after death can sometimes create conditions that appear mysterious when first discovered. Others wondered whether the events might have involved unknown predators or human interference. Because the ranch covered a large and isolated area, it was difficult to monitor every part of the property continuously. Over time, stories about unusual livestock deaths became one of the most widely discussed elements associated with the ranch. These reports spread beyond the local community and began attracting attention from journalists and investigators interested in unexplained rural phenomena. For the family living on the property, however, the issue was not simply a mystery, but a practical concern. Ranching depends on the stability of the herd, and any unexplained loss of livestock carries both financial and emotional impact. These incidents involving cattle would eventually become one of the key reasons why outside researchers became interested in studying the ranch more closely. The report suggested that something unusual might be occurring on the property, even if the exact cause remained uncertain. As reports from the ranch continued spreading beyond the quiet communities of the Uintah Basin, the unusual stories began attracting attention from individuals interested in studying unexplained phenomena. What had started as private experiences described by the Sherman family slowly became a subject of curiosity for researchers, journalists, and investigators. During the 1990s, stories about strange lights, unusual animal encounters, and unexplained livestock incidents were circulating more widely. The ranch itself, now commonly referred to as Skinwalker Ranch, had begun developing a reputation as a place where unusual events were frequently reported. Among those who became interested in the reports was Robert Bigelow, an entrepreneur known for funding research into unexplained aerial phenomena and other unusual scientific questions. Bigelow had already supported investigations into topics that traditional scientific institutions often approached cautiously. After hearing about the stories coming from the ranch, Bigelow arranged for the property to be purchased so that researchers could study the reports more carefully. The goal was not simply to collect stories, but to conduct structured observations that might reveal whether anything measurable was occurring at the location. Following the purchase, a group of investigators began visiting the ranch regularly. Their work eventually became associated with the organization known as National Institute for Discovery Science. This group aimed to document events carefully using cameras, sensors, and direct observation. Researchers installed monitoring equipment around parts of the ranch in an effort to capture evidence of the phenomena that had been reported. Cameras were positioned in areas where strange lights or animal sightings had allegedly occurred. Other instruments were used to monitor environmental changes that might help explain unusual events. Investigators spent long nights observing the landscape and recording anything that appeared out of the ordinary. In remote environments where natural conditions can change rapidly, such careful monitoring can help researchers separate ordinary environmental events from those that require further explanation. According to accounts from some of the investigators, the ranch occasionally produced observations that they considered unusual. However, documenting such events in a consistent and scientifically verifiable way proved difficult. Scientific investigation of unusual claims often requires repeatable observations that can be measured under controlled conditions. In the case of the ranch, many reported events were unpredictable, making them difficult to study. Despite these challenges, the presence of organized research teams helped transform the ranch from a local curiosity into a subject of national interest. Journalists and documentary filmmakers began reporting on the investigations, further expanding public awareness of the location. For some observers, the arrival of scientists and investigators suggested that the ranch might hold clues to unexplained natural phenomena. For others, the investigations demonstrated how difficult it can be to study extraordinary claims in environments where events occur unpredictably. Regardless of interpretation, the scientific attention directed toward the ranch marked a new phase in its history. What had once been a quiet rural property was now becoming one of the most discussed locations associated with unexplained phenomena in modern American folklore. As scientific curiosity surrounding Skinwalker Ranch continued growing, interest in the property eventually reached government circles as well. Reports of unusual aerial sightings, unexplained animal incidents, and strange environmental observations had already drawn the attention of private researchers. Some officials began wondering whether the location might also deserve closer examination. From a national security perspective, during the late 1990s and early 2000s, discussions began emerging within government and defense communities about unexplained aerial phenomena reported across the United States. In certain cases, these reports involved objects that appeared to move in ways that were difficult to explain using conventional aircraft technology. Because the ranch had already developed a reputation for unusual sightings, it became one of several locations that researchers considered potentially useful for studying such phenomena. The remote environment of the Uintah Basin offered wide visibility of the sky and relatively low levels of light pollution, making it a place where unusual aerial activity could be observed more easily. Eventually, some of the research connected to the ranch became linked with a program known as the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. This program was created to examine reports of unidentified aerial objects and to evaluate whether any of them might represent technologies not yet understood. Researchers involved in these efforts attempted to gather information using cameras, environmental sensors, and observational equipment. The goal was not necessarily to confirm paranormal explanations, but to determine whether unusual aerial or environmental phenomena could be documented and studied scientifically. Investigators sometimes spent long periods monitoring the ranch property, particularly during nighttime hours when many of the reported sightings had occurred. Remote cameras and observation points were established in an attempt to capture evidence that might clarify the nature of the reported lights and movements in the sky. Studying unexplained phenomena presents unique challenges. Events that are reported sporadically are difficult to record under controlled conditions, and researchers must carefully distinguish between genuine anomalies and events that can be explained by known, natural, or technological causes. Some investigators believed that the ranch might represent a location where environmental factors occasionally created unusual observations. Others suggested that many reports might result from ordinary phenomena interpreted through the lens of expectation and local legend. Over time, information about these research efforts began appearing in news reports and public discussions. The idea that government-connected programs had shown interest in the ranch added another layer of intrigue to the story. However, even with advanced equipment and organized observation efforts, researchers were not able to produce clear and repeatable evidence that explained all of the reports associated with the property. The events described by witnesses remained difficult to capture consistently. As a result, the ranch continued occupying a unique place between folklore, scientific curiosity, and popular culture. Government-connected research may have attempted to examine the phenomena more closely, but the mysteries surrounding the ranch were far from resolved. For many observers, this mixture of investigation and uncertainty only strengthened the reputation of the ranch as one of the most intriguing locations connected to unexplained phenomena in modern America. As the reputation of Skinwalker Ranch continued to grow, so did the debate surrounding the events reported there. While some investigators believed the location might represent an unusual concentration of unexplained phenomena, others approached the claims with caution and skepticism. In scientific inquiry, extraordinary claims require careful evidence. Researchers trained in scientific methods often emphasize the importance of repeatable observations, controlled conditions, and measurable data. Without these elements, unusual reports can be difficult to evaluate with confidence. Some scientists suggested that many of the reported sightings might be explained by natural environmental factors present in the Uintah Basin. The basin's geography can produce atmospheric conditions that sometimes create unusual visual effects in the sky. Temperature inversions, distant aircraft reflections, and other atmospheric phenomena can occasionally cause lights to appear distorted, or to move in ways that seem unfamiliar to observers on the ground. In remote areas where the sky is exceptionally clear, these effects can become especially noticeable. Wildlife behavior has also been discussed as a possible explanation for some reports involving unusual animals. Large predators, unfamiliar species passing through the region, or even animals behaving unexpectedly due to environmental stress, can sometimes create sightings that appear mysterious. Livestock incidents reported on the ranch have also been examined from practical perspectives. Veterinary experts and agricultural specialists have noted that natural processes, including disease, scavenger activity, and decomposition, can sometimes produce results that initially appear unusual when animals are discovered in open pastures. Psychological factors may also play a role when communities begin discussing mysterious events. When people expect to see unusual things, they may become more attentive to details that might otherwise go unnoticed. Over time, individual experiences can merge into shared narratives that reinforce the idea that a particular place carries unusual activity. This does not necessarily mean that witnesses are intentionally exaggerating their experiences. Human perception is influenced by context, expectations, and memory, all of which shape how events are interpreted after they occur. Some skeptics have also pointed out that documenting unexplained phenomena requires consistent and reliable recordings. Cameras, sensors, and other instruments must capture events clearly in order for scientists to analyze them. Without such evidence, many reports remain personal experiences rather than verifiable observations. At the same time, supporters of continued investigation argue that unexplained reports should not automatically be dismissed. Throughout history, Scientific discoveries have often begun with observations that initially seemed unusual or poorly understood. Because of these differing viewpoints, the ranch has become a place where science, curiosity, skepticism, and folklore intersect. For some researchers, the location offers an opportunity to study unusual reports carefully. For others, it represents an example of how stories can grow and evolve around a particular place. As the unusual reports connected to Skinwalker Ranch continued spreading beyond the local communities of the Uintah Basin, journalists and documentary producers began taking interest in the story. What had originally been a series of private accounts shared by a ranching family gradually transformed into a subject discussed in books, news articles, and television programs. One of the earliest major publications that brought attention to the ranch was a book written by investigative journalist George Knapp and author Colm Kelleher. Their work introduced the ranch to a much wider audience and described the experiences reported by residents and researchers who had spent time on the property. The book presented the ranch as a location where many different types of unusual events had allegedly occurred. These included strange animals, unexplained aerial lights, livestock incidents, and reports of other phenomena that witnesses struggled to explain. Because the stories involved multiple types of experiences, the ranch became associated with a wide range of mysterious activity. As media coverage expanded, the ranch quickly became a topic discussed within communities interested in unexplained phenomena. Television documentaries and investigative programs began featuring segments about the location, often highlighting the dramatic aspects of the reports. Over time, the ranch's reputation continued growing. The name itself, Skinwalker Ranch, carried a powerful sense of mystery that connected modern reports with older folklore traditions. For many viewers and readers, the combination of scientific investigation, rural isolation, and strange witness accounts made the story especially compelling. Eventually, the ranch also became the subject of television series that attempted to document ongoing investigations at the property. One of the most widely known programs is The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, which follows researchers conducting experiments and observations on the land. Television productions often approach such stories by combining historical background with current investigations. Cameras record experiments, aerial observations, and discussions among researchers attempting to interpret unusual data or witness accounts. The popularity of these programs further strengthened the ranch's reputation as one of the most mysterious locations in the United States. Viewers around the world began learning about the stories associated with the property and the ongoing attempts to understand them. At the same time, media attention can sometimes amplify the dramatic aspects of a story. Television and documentaries often highlight the most unusual moments reported by witnesses because these events capture audience interest. As a result, the public image of the ranch gradually evolved into something larger than the original local reports. For some observers, the media attention helped bring valuable awareness and resources to ongoing investigations. For others, the increasing popularity of the story blurred the line between documented events and storytelling. Regardless of interpretation, the influence of media coverage played a major role in shaping how the ranch is understood today. What began as a series of strange experiences reported by one family eventually grew into a widely known legend discussed in documentaries, books, and television programs around the world. By the early 21st century, Skinwalker Ranch had become more than just a physical location. It had become a symbol of modern mystery, where science, folklore, and media storytelling intersect in ways that continue to capture public curiosity. Today, the quiet stretch of land known as Skinwalker Ranch continues to hold a unique place in modern mystery culture. Located within the wide and sparsely populated region of the Uintah Basin, the ranch has become widely recognized as a location associated with unusual reports and unanswered questions. Over the years, the stories connected to the ranch have grown into a mixture of first-hand experiences, scientific curiosity, and cultural storytelling. Witnesses have described strange lights in the sky, unusual animal encounters, unexplained livestock incidents, and other events that investigators have attempted to understand. At the same time, researchers studying the location have often emphasized the difficulty of confirming such reports through traditional scientific methods. Many of the events described by witnesses occur unpredictably, making them difficult to record with instruments or cameras. This challenge is common when studying unexplained phenomena, without consistent observations that can be repeated and measured. It becomes difficult for scientists to determine whether unusual events represent unknown natural processes, misunderstood environmental effects, or simply rare coincidences. Despite these difficulties, interest in the ranch has continued for decades. Private research organizations, journalists, and documentary filmmakers have all contributed to the ongoing discussion about what might be happening there. Part of the ranch's enduring reputation comes from the wide variety of experiences reported at the location. Unlike some mysteries that involve only a single unexplained event, the ranch has been associated with multiple categories of unusual observations. These include aerial lights, strange animals, environmental disturbances, and other reports that seem to fall into different categories of unexplained phenomena. For some observers, this combination suggests the possibility that the ranch represents a unique environment where unusual conditions occasionally occur. For others, the ranch serves as an example of how stories can develop over time. When one unusual report becomes widely known, additional experiences may be interpreted through the same lens, gradually creating a narrative that grows larger with each retelling. The remote landscape of northeastern Utah also plays an important role in the story. In quiet rural environments where the night sky stretches wide and the land remains largely undisturbed, natural events can sometimes appear more mysterious than they might in urban settings. Whether the ranch represents a location of genuine unexplained phenomena or a powerful example of how folklore develops around a place remains a subject of debate. Researchers, skeptics, and curious observers continue examining the stories and evidence connected to the property. What remains certain is that Skinwalker Ranch has become one of the most widely discussed locations associated with modern mystery. Its reputation has grown from local accounts shared within rural communities to an internationally recognized symbol of unexplained phenomena. For many people, the ranch represents the idea that even in the modern world there are still places where questions remain unanswered. And it is perhaps this sense of quiet uncertainty that continues drawing attention to the isolated ranch in the wide landscapes of Utah. As our story gently comes to a close tonight, the quiet desert landscape of the Uintah Basin returns to stillness. The ranch known as Skinwalker Ranch remains where it has always been, surrounded by open fields, distant mountains, and the wide night sky stretching above the desert. For decades, the land has been connected with stories of strange lights, unusual animal encounters, and events that some witnesses believe remain difficult to explain. At the same time, scientists and skeptics continue examining these reports carefully, searching for evidence that might reveal natural causes behind the experiences described there. In many ways, the ranch represents something that has always existed in human history. Certain places develop reputations shaped by the experiences of those who spend time there. Over years and generations, these stories grow into legends that invite curiosity and investigation. The remote environment of northeastern Utah plays an important role in this story. In places where the night sky is clear and the landscape is quiet, natural events can appear especially mysterious. Lights in the sky, distant animal movements, or unusual sounds can take on greater meaning when they occur in isolation. Whether the ranch is ultimately understood as a location of unexplained phenomena, unusual environmental conditions, or powerful storytelling shaped by human perception remains an open question. Investigations continue, observations are recorded, and discussions about the property remain active. For many people, the fascination of Skinwalker Ranch lies not only in the events themselves, but in the mystery that surrounds them. The idea that some places still resist simple explanations captures the imagination in a way that few stories can. Tonight we have explored the landscape, the early reports from the Sherman family, the investigations that followed, and the many different perspectives offered by researchers and skeptics alike. Each piece of the story contributes to the larger picture of how the ranch became one of the most widely discussed locations, connected to unexplained phenomena. If you found tonight's calm documentary relaxing or interesting, you are always welcome here. Subscribing to the channel and leaving a like helps support the creation of more long-form stories designed for quiet listening and peaceful reflection. Now the desert grows still again. The wind moves slowly across the basin, the sky above the mountains remains quiet, and the story gently fades into the calm rhythm of the night as the mind settles and drifts towards sleep.